It was my daughter Rebecca's 45th birthday, and I had arrived at her house early with the cake I'd ordered specially from her favorite bakery. It cost $200, but for my only child, nothing was too expensive. I knocked on the door with a smile, expecting to see her face light up like it did when she was a little girl. But when she opened it, her expression was one of total annoyance. "Oh, it's you," she muttered without even looking me in the eye. "Happy birthday, my love," I said, holding out the cake with the candles already in place. "I brought your favorite, chocolate with strawberries, just like when you were a kid." Rebecca sighed deeply, as if my presence were an unbearable burden. "Mom, we need to talk," she said dryly, letting me inside without even a thank you for the cake. We sat down in the living room of her beautiful home, a house that I had completely financed when she and David got married. It had been $50,000 that I'd pulled from my life savings, money I'd saved penny by penny, working double shifts as a nurse for 40 years. "You know, Mom," Rebecca began, in that cold voice she had developed over the past few years, "I've been thinking a lot about my birthday, about presents, and about what would truly make me happy." I nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, my love. Tell me what you want and I'll get it for you. A trip, some jewelry, maybe that new car you mentioned?" Rebecca looked me straight in the eye, and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. It was pure contempt. "The one thing I'd love most as a birthday present," she said slowly, savoring each word, "is for you to just die." The world stopped. I literally felt as if someone had ripped my heart from my chest. Her words echoed in my ears like an endless loop. My daughter, my own daughter, had wished for my death as a birthday gift. "What? What did you just say?" I managed to whisper, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "You heard me," she continued, with a coldness that cut through me like knives. "I'm tired of you, Mom. Tired of your constant calls, your unexpected visits, of you always being here bothering me. My life would be so much easier and happier if you would just disappear." My hands were shaking uncontrollably. 72 years of living, 45 years of being her mother, and I never ever thought I would hear those words come out of her mouth. "Rebecca," I managed to say between sobs, "I'm your mother. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed everything for you." "Exactly," she interrupted, standing up from the sofa. "And that's why you're suffocating me. I can't breathe with your constant presence. I need freedom. I need you to let me live my life without your drama and your emotional needs." The $200 cake was still in my hands, the candles beginning to melt. Everything I had dreamed for that day, hugs, laughter, maybe a family dinner, vanished like smoke. "But honey," I tried one more time, "I just want to be close to you, to be a part of your life. You're all I have." "And that's exactly the problem," she replied, crossing her arms. "The fact that I'm all you have. Go get a life of your own and leave me alone." I got up from the sofa, my legs trembling, carrying that cake that now felt like a mockery. "I can't believe you're saying this to me," I murmured, "after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done?" She laughed sarcastically. "Mom, everything you've done has been for your own benefit, to feel needed, to have control over my life, but I'm not a little girl anymore." I walked toward the door, feeling as if each step was costing me years of my life. As I reached the threshold, I turned one last time, hoping to see some regret in her eyes, some sign of the sweet little girl she once was. But I only saw impatience for me to leave so she could finally celebrate her birthday without the nuisance I represented. "Happy birthday, Rebecca," I murmured, and I walked out of that house, closing the door behind me. I didn't know at that moment that it would be the last time I would ever enter that house as the mother who had sacrificed everything, because what my daughter didn't know was that she had just awakened something in me that had been dormant for decades. I arrived at my small apartment with trembling legs and a broken heart. The $200 cake ended up in the trash, the melted candles a reflection of the tears that wouldn't stop falling. I sat on my old sofa, The same sofa where I had nursed Rebecca as a baby, where I had read her stories for years, where I had cried tears of happiness every time she called me Mom. How had I ended up here? How could my own daughter, the child I had carried in my womb for 9 months, wish for my death with such coldness? I began to remember everything, absolutely everything I had done for her over the past 45 years. When she was 3 and got pneumonia, I worked triple shifts at the hospital to pay for her medicine. It was $1,200 in antibiotics that my insurance didn't cover, money I got from selling my late mother's jewelry. When she turned 16 and wanted to go to the prom, I worked entire weekends for 4 months to buy her that pink dress that cost $800. I remember how her eyes sparkled when she tried it on. "Thank you, Mom. You're the best in the world," she had said, hugging me tight. In college, when she changed her major for the 3rd time, I paid for every semester without a single complaint. $42,000 in total, money I got by taking out a second mortgage on my house. "Don't worry, honey," I would tell her every time she called me crying. "Your education is the most important thing." When she married David, I organized and paid for the entire wedding, $35,000, so she could have the wedding of her dreams. The most elegant ballroom in the city, the most beautiful flowers, the menu she chose without worrying about the price. "I want my princess to have everything," I told her as I signed check after check. And then came the house, that very house where she had just humiliated me. When Rebecca and David decided they wanted to buy their first property, I didn't hesitate for a second. "Don't worry about the down payment," I told them. "I'll take care of it." It was $150,000 from my life savings, the money I had been saving for my retirement. But it didn't end there. When the twins arrived 5 years ago, I became the free babysitter. Every night Rebecca wanted to go out with David. Every time they had plans and needed someone to watch the kids, there I was, not charging a single cent, happy to help my daughter have the life she had always dreamed of. When David lost his job last year, who paid the mortgage for 8 months? Me. $16,000 that I took from my pension, money that meant eating rice and beans for weeks just to stretch my income. And when the twins needed braces, another $4,000 that I covered without a second thought. "Don't worry," I told them, seeing their distressed faces. "That's what grandparents are for." I got up from the sofa and went to my desk, where I kept all the receipts, all the proof of every single penny I had spent on my daughter and her family. They were boxes and boxes of documents that I had kept, not because of mistrust, but because it made me proud to remember everything I had been able to do for them. I started doing the math, raising Rebecca from birth until she was on her own, approximately $200,000. College, $42,000. The wedding, $35,000. The down payment on the house, $150,000. The mortgage payments when David was unemployed, $16,000. The twins' braces, $4,000. The birthday and Christmas gifts over all those years, at least $10,000 more. The total was devastating, over $460,000, almost $500,000 that I had invested in my daughter's happiness. And all of it to hear that her greatest desire was for me to die. Tears fell onto the papers as I added and subtracted. If I had put that money in a savings account with compound interest, today I would have more than $600,000. I could be living in a nice house, traveling the world, enjoying a comfortable retirement instead of counting pennies in this tiny apartment. But no, I had chosen to invest in love. I had chosen to believe that the money spent on my daughter was money well spent, that every sacrifice was worth it, because in the end, I would have a daughter who loved me and would take care of me in my old age. How foolish I had been. I picked up the phone and dialed Rebecca's number. I needed to hear her voice one more time. I needed to confirm that she had really said those terrible words. "What do you want now, Mom?" She answered with annoyance after the 5th ring. "Rebecca, I need to know if you really meant what you said to me today," I asked in a trembling voice. "Of course I meant it," she replied without a hint of remorse. "Mom, it's time for you to understand that I need space. Your obsession with me isn't healthy." "Obsession?" I repeated, incredulous. "You call a mother's love obsession?" Yes, exactly that. And I hope that after today you finally get the message. I need you to respect my boundaries and let me live my life. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. There was no misunderstanding. My daughter truly believed that my love was a burden, that my presence in her life was a problem she needed to solve. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering every beautiful moment we had shared. Every hug, every "I love you, Mom" that had come from her lips. Had it all been a lie? Or had I simply raised a daughter who had become so selfish that she couldn't see beyond her own needs? At 3 a.m, something changed inside of me. The sadness began to transform into something different, into anger, into indignation, into the clear understanding that I had been used, manipulated, and discarded like a used tissue. My daughter wanted me to die. Well, maybe it was time to give her exactly what she asked for. The next day, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The sadness had given way to something more powerful: determination. If my daughter wanted me to disappear from her life, I would, but not in the way she expected. I put on my best clothes and went out with a defined purpose. First stop, the bank where I had a joint account with Rebecca for her house's emergency expenses. That account I had opened just in case, and in which I had deposited $20,000 for any unforeseen events that might arise. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson," greeted the manager, Mr. Martinez, who had known me for years. "How can I help you today?" "I want to close joint account number 45872-891, I said with a smile that he interpreted as kindness, but which was in reality pure vengeance. "Are you sure? That account has a considerable balance of $20,000, he warned, checking his computer screen. "Completely sure. I want to transfer all of that money to my personal account," I replied, signing the papers with a steady hand. Seeing those $20,000 return to my personal account gave me a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. It was only the beginning. Next stop, the mortgage loan office. During the past year, when David was unemployed, I had co-signed their mortgage. That meant that if they couldn't pay, the responsibility fell on me. But it also meant that I had rights to that property. "Mrs. Johnson," the loan officer, Ms. Williams, greeted me. "What brings you here?" "I want to review the mortgage contract where I appear as a co-signer," I explained. "I need to understand exactly what my rights and obligations are." While she looked for the documents, I remembered the day I signed those papers. Rebecca had cried with emotion. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you. You're our savior," she had said, hugging me tight. David had also thanked me, promising me they would never have late payments. "Here are the documents," Ms. Williams said, placing a thick folder in front of me. "As a co-signer, you are responsible for the payments if the primary holders cannot make them. But you also have the right to reclaim the property if you believe the debtors won't be able to fulfill their obligations." "Exactly," I completed, examining the papers carefully. "Is there a problem with the payments?" she asked with professional concern. "I'm evaluating the situation," I replied, putting a copy of all the documents in my bag. "What would I have to do if I decided to exercise my rights as co-signer?" "You would have to demonstrate that there's a risk of default or that there have already been significant delays. In your case, I see that you covered 8 months of payments last year, which is already sufficient evidence that the primary holders lack financial stability." Perfect. David had lost his job again last week. Information that Rebecca had given me without thinking about the implications. She thought she was asking for help indirectly, but what she was really giving me were the weapons for my revenge. I left that office with a smile. My dear daughter had no idea of the storm that was brewing. Third stop, my personal lawyer, Mr. Ansel Adams, a 70-year-old man who had been a friend of my late husband's. He knew my entire family situation and had witnessed my sacrifices for Rebecca for decades. "Julietta," he greeted me warmly, "what brings you to my office? It's not common to see you here." "Ansel, "I need your help with something very important," I told him, sitting in front of his desk. "I want to completely change my will." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Has something happened with Rebecca?" I told him everything. Every hurtful word, every moment of contempt, the coldness with which she had wished for my death on her own birthday. Ansel listened to me in silence, his expression becoming more serious with each detail. "Julieta," he said finally, "I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I never thought Rebecca was capable of something like that after everything you've done for her." "Me neither," I sighed, "but I've made my decision. I want to change my will and leave everything to a charitable organization. I also want to set up a trust fund for my grandchildren, but Rebecca can't have access to that money until they turn 25. "That can be done," Ansel nodded, taking notes. "Do you also want to change the beneficiaries of your life insurance?" "Of course. Anything with Rebecca's name on it, I want to change it. My daughter wants me to die, but when I do, she's not going to receive a single penny from me." We spent 2 hours reviewing all my legal documents, my $100,000 life insurance policy, my savings, my apartment, my investments. Everything that had once been designated for Rebecca would now go to the Orphans Foundation, where I had worked as a volunteer for years. "There's something else," I said when we were finishing. "I want you to prepare all the documents to reclaim the house where Rebecca lives. As the co-signer of the mortgage, I have rights, and her husband just lost his job again." Ansel's eyes lit up with understanding. "Now I see where you're going with all of this. Are you sure you want to go that far?" "Completely sure," I replied with a determination that surprised even myself. "My daughter told me her life would be easier if I disappeared. Well, I'm going to disappear, but first I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what it means to live without me and without everything I've done for her." When I left Ansel's office, it was already dark. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood feeling renewed, as if I had woken up from a very long dream. For 45 years, I had lived for Rebecca. I had sacrificed my own dreams and desires to give her everything she wanted, but no more. I got back to my apartment and poured myself a glass of wine, something I hadn't done in years. Toasting myself was something completely new, but it felt incredibly liberating. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had saved months ago but had never dared to use. It was for a travel agency specializing in retirees that offered packages for living abroad. "Good evening, this is Julieta Johnson," I said when they answered. "I saw your promotion about living in Switzerland. Could you send me complete information?" "Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Switzerland is a very popular destination among our clients. We have several programs, from temporary stays to permanent residency. What kind of information do you need?" "Everything," I replied without hesitation. "I want to know everything about how a 72-year-old person can start a new life in Switzerland." After hanging up, I stood at the window, looking out at the city where I had lived my entire life. Soon, all of this would be just a memory. My daughter had asked for my disappearance as a birthday gift, and I was going to grant it to her in the most spectacular way possible. What Rebecca didn't know was that her wish was about to become her worst nightmare. The next few days were a roller coaster of emotions and secret preparations. Every morning, I woke up with a mix of pain and determination that pushed me forward with my plan. It was as if I had woken from a long slumber where I had lived only to please my daughter, and now, finally, I was living for myself. On Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. For a moment, my heart sped up, thinking that maybe she had reconsidered, that she might apologize for the terrible words she had said. How naive I still was. "Mom," she said in that cold voice she had adopted lately, "I need you to do me a favor." Not even a hello or "how are you?" She went straight to the point, as if I were her personal assistant. "What do you need?" I asked, curious to see how far her audacity would go. "The twins have a presentation at school on Friday, and David and I have an important work dinner. Could you watch them that night?" The irony was delicious. The same woman who had wished for my death as a birthday gift was now asking me to watch her children as if nothing had happened, as if I were a resource available 24/7. "I can't," I replied simply. What do you mean you can't? She asked with genuine surprise. Evidently, she wasn't used to me saying no. I have other plans, I lied with a smile she couldn't see. What plans could you possibly have? She asked with that condescending tone that hurt me deeply, as if at 72 years old, I didn't have the right to have a life of my own. Plans that are none of your business, I replied, keeping my calm. Find another sitter. But Mom, I can't get a sitter on such short notice. Besides, since when do you charge me to watch your own grandchildren? There it was, the emotional manipulation she had used on me for years, but this time it wouldn't work. Since you told me that your greatest gift would be for me to die, I answered with coldness. If you want me to disappear from your life, I'm starting now. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Rebecca let out a sarcastic laugh. Seriously, you're going to punish me like you're a little brat, she said. I thought after a few days the drama would be over. It's not drama, Rebecca. It's respect for your wish. You wanted me to disappear, so that's what I'll do. Fine, she said with annoyance. If you want to be that childish, that's on you. But don't come crying later when you're lonely. She hung up without saying goodbye. Perfect. Every interaction confirmed that I was making the right decision. That afternoon, I went to the bank again, this time to do something I never thought I would, withdraw most of my savings in cash. It was $30,000 that I put in an envelope and stored in my personal safe, the money I would need for my new life in Switzerland. I also called the travel agency and confirmed my trip. A flight to Zurich for next Tuesday with the option to extend my stay indefinitely. The initial cost was $5,000, money I paid without blinking an eye. It was the most expensive and most intelligent investment I had made in years. On Thursday morning, I received an unexpected visit. It was my neighbor, Elvira, a 68-year-old woman who lived in the apartment next door and with whom I had developed a friendship over the past 5 years. Julieta, she said, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee. You look different these days. Has something happened? Elvira had been a silent witness to all my sacrifices for Rebecca. She had seen me cancel plans with her to rush over whenever my daughter needed me. She had seen the bags of expensive food I would buy to take to Rebecca, while I ate canned soup to save money. I told her everything, every painful detail of what had happened on Rebecca's birthday, and also all the plans I had been making during the week. My God, Julieta, Elvira murmured, her eyes filled with tears. I can't believe Rebecca would say something so cruel to you after everything you've done for her. The worst part is that she said it as if it were the most normal thing in the world, I explained, as if I were a nuisance in her life that needed to be eliminated. And you're really going to Switzerland? Yes, I replied firmly. I've already bought the ticket. I'm leaving on Tuesday. Elvira took my hands kindly. You know you have my full support, right? What Rebecca did to you is unforgivable. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. I'm going to need your help with something very important. I explained my complete plan, how I wanted Rebecca to believe I had truly died, at least for a while. Elvira would be my accomplice, the person who would find my empty apartment and my farewell letter. It's brilliant, Elvira murmured with a mischievous smile. That ungrateful child is finally going to understand what it means to lose you. Will you help me? Of course I will. In fact, I think it's exactly what Rebecca needs to wake up. That night, I worked on the most important letter of my life. The letter that Rebecca would find on her table and that would change everything forever. I wrote and rewrote every word, making sure it conveyed exactly what I wanted to say. My dear Rebecca, the letter began, you asked me as a birthday gift to disappear from your life, and I have decided to grant your wish. When you read this letter, I will already be far from here, starting the life I should have lived years ago instead of sacrificing it all for you. I continued writing for hours, documenting every penny I had spent on her, every sacrifice I had made, every opportunity I had missed by always being available for her needs. But it wasn't a bitter letter. It was an educational letter. I wanted her to understand exactly what she had lost. Along with this letter, you will find all the legal documents I have signed this week. I continued writing. The change of will, the cancellation of your health insurance that I paid for, the notification that as the co-signer of your mortgage, I have decided to exercise my rights due to David's job instability, and the cancellation of all financial benefits you received from me. It was a 23-page letter that meticulously detailed everything that was going to change in her life now that I had disappeared, just as she wanted. Your life will be much easier without me, the letter ended, but it will also be much more expensive. I hope it's worth it. On Friday night, as I was packing my most important belongings into 2 suitcases, I received a call from Rebecca. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times, but I simply let the phone ring. I had nothing left to say to her. The next day, Saturday, David appeared at my door. He looked exhausted and desperate. "Julieta," he said in a pleading voice, "Rebecca told me what happened between you two. I know what she said was wrong, but please don't do this to our family." "Do what?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Stop helping us. Just withdrawing from our lives like this. The kids need you. We need you." How interesting. When Rebecca wanted to get rid of me, I was a nuisance. But when they realized everything I did for them, suddenly they needed me. "David," I said calmly, "your wife was very clear with me. My presence in her life is a burden she no longer wants to bear. I'm just respecting her wishes." "But Julieta, you know how Rebecca is when she gets mad. She didn't mean it." "Oh, she didn't?" "Because she sounded pretty convincing when she wished for my death as a birthday gift." David lowered his head. He knew he had no argument to defend the indefensible. "Please," he insisted, "give me a chance to fix this. I'll talk to Rebecca. I'll make her understand how wrong she is." "It's too late for that," I replied, slowly closing the door. "Give my grandchildren a kiss for me." Sunday was my last day in that city. I spent the morning walking through the places that had been important in my life. The hospital where I had worked for 40 years, the park where I had taken Rebecca as a child, the church where I had married her father. It was my silent farewell to a life I had lived completely for others. On Monday, I would begin a life that I would finally live for myself. On Sunday night, I couldn't sleep, not because of nerves or regret, but because of a strange emotion I hadn't felt in decades, the anticipation of an adventure. At 72 years old, I was about to begin the life I had always dreamed of, but never dared to live. At 5 a.m. on Monday, Elvira knocked on my door as we had arranged. She brought fresh coffee and a knowing smile that filled me with energy. "Ready for your great escape?" she asked, winking. "More than ready," I replied, carrying my 2 suitcases to the door. "Do you have the spare keys to my apartment?" "Here they are," she said, showing me the set of keys I had given her the night before. "And I also have the letter for Rebecca and all the legal documents you're going to leave on her table." We had planned everything meticulously. Elvira would wait until Wednesday to go to Rebecca's apartment and deliver the documents, pretending that she had found my apartment empty and had become worried about my disappearance. It would be she who would break the news to Rebecca that I was gone forever. "Remember," I said as we called a cab, "you have to act very worried. Tell her I didn't answer the phone for 2 days, that you knocked on my door and I didn't respond, and that when you used the emergency keys, you found the apartment empty and the letter on her table. Don't you worry, Julieta. I was a drama teacher for 30 years. It's going to be the performance of my life," Elvira told me with a mischievous smile. The cab arrived punctually at 6 a.m. As they loaded my suitcases, I took one last look at my apartment. I had lived there for 15 years, but strangely, I didn't feel nostalgic. It was as if I was finally freeing myself from a prison I had built myself. "To the airport?" the cab driver asked. "To the airport," I confirmed, and I felt as if those 2 words marked the beginning of my new existence. During the 40-minute ride, I thought about everything I was leaving behind. My volunteer work at the hospital, my daily routines, the constant worry about Rebecca and her problems. but I also thought about everything that awaited me. The freedom to make my own decisions, to spend my money on myself, to live without the constant weight of my daughter's emotional demands. At the airport, while I waited for my flight, I received 3 calls from Rebecca that I didn't answer. Then a text message came in. "Mom, you're being ridiculous. The kids are asking about you. Call me." I deleted the message without replying. It was fascinating how, now that I wasn't available 24/7, she suddenly needed me. The flight to Zurich was long but peaceful. For the first time in years, no one knew where I was. No one could call me to ask for favors, money, or time. It was an intoxicating feeling of freedom I hadn't experienced since before I became a mother. During the 12-hour journey, I wrote in my journal everything that had happened in the last week. Every detail, every emotion, every decision that had led me to that moment. I wanted to remember exactly what it felt like to free myself from a toxic relationship, even when that relationship was with my own daughter. I arrived in Zurich on Tuesday night, local time. A representative from the travel agency was waiting for me at the airport with a sign that had my name on it. He was a young, kind man named Klaus who spoke perfect English. "Mrs. Johnson," he greeted me with a genuine smile. "Welcome to Switzerland. I hope you're ready for a new adventure." "More than ready," I replied, and for the first time in weeks, my smile was completely authentic. Klaus took me to a beautiful furnished apartment in the center of Zurich that he had rented for 1 month while I decided if I wanted to stay permanently. It was small but cozy, with windows that overlooked a lovely park and a partial view of the lake. "Here is all the information about the city," Klaus said, handing me a thick folder. "Places to eat, activities for people your age, German classes, social groups. I've also scheduled a meeting for you with a financial advisor for tomorrow afternoon to help you with the paperwork if you decide to stay permanently." That night, I slept better than I had in years. There was no phone that could ring, no one who needed anything from me, no responsibilities beyond taking care of myself. On Wednesday morning, I woke up early and went out to explore the city. I had breakfast at a charming cafe by the lake. I bought fresh flowers for my temporary apartment, and for the first time in decades, I spent money on something completely unnecessary, a beautiful silk scarf that cost $100. I bought it simply because I liked it, without worrying about the price or whether that money could be better invested in my daughter's needs. As I walked through the streets of Zurich, I mentally calculated how much money I had spent on Rebecca in just the last 5 years. Between the mortgage payments when David was unemployed, the twins' braces, the constant gifts, the gas to go watch the kids, the food I always brought when I visited, it had been at least $50,000. $50,000 I could have used to travel the world, to live comfortably, to fulfill the dreams I had postponed for decades. Instead, I had given it to a daughter who considered my love a burden and my presence a nuisance. At 2 p.m, Zurich time, I calculated that it would be 8 a.m. in my hometown. Elvira would be preparing to go to Rebecca's apartment to deliver the letter that would change everything. I sat on a bench by the lake and waited. I knew that in a few hours my phone would start ringing desperately. Rebecca would finally understand what it meant to truly lose me. At 5 p.m, my phone started to vibrate. It was Rebecca. I let it ring until it stopped. Immediately, it rang again. Again, Rebecca. This time, I answered. "Mom!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Where are you?" "Elvira came to the house with a letter from you. She said you've disappeared. What's going on?" "Hello, Rebecca," I replied calmly, enjoying the Swiss lake as I spoke. "Did you read the letter yet?" "Yes, I read it. Are you crazy? How could you do this to us? Where are you?" "I'm exactly where I need to be," I replied, "far away from you, just as you wanted." "But I didn't want this. I didn't want you to actually leave. I was just angry. I didn't mean it." There it was, Rebecca's typical tactic, minimizing the harm she had caused, making me feel guilty for reacting to her cruelty. "You didn't mean it when you told me that your greatest birthday wish was for me to die?" I asked her, "because you sounded pretty convincing." "It was just, I was just frustrated. David lost his job again. The kids are giving me problems at school. I'm so stressed. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. You're right. You shouldn't have. But it's done, and words can't be taken back. But Mom, please, come back. We need you. I need you. How interesting. Now she needed me. Now that she had read the letter about all the financial benefits she had lost. Now that she knew she could lose her house. Now that she understood she would have to pay for her own health insurance and find a sitter for the twins. Do you need me, or do you need my money? I asked her directly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I need you, she finally murmured, but her voice didn't sound convincing. Rebecca, for 45 years, I lived for you. I sacrificed my dreams, my money, my time, my opportunities. And when I finally needed to feel that you loved me and valued me, you told me you'd rather I was dead. Those words broke my heart in a way I will never be able to fix. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Sorry is not enough, Rebecca. The damage is done. And you know what? Maybe it was the best thing you could have said to me, because it finally opened my eyes and made me understand that I've been living my life all wrong. What do you mean? I mean that for the first time in decades, I am living for me, and it feels wonderful. Where are you, Mom? Please tell me, Rebecca begged, her voice choked with tears. The kids are asking about their grandma. They don't understand why you haven't come to see them. It was fascinating how now that I wasn't available, the grandchildren suddenly missed me. For all those years, when I canceled my plans to watch them, when I bought them expensive gifts, when I took them to the park while Rebecca went shopping, it was just what was expected of me. But now that I was gone, my absence was felt. The kids will be fine, I replied, looking at the Swiss mountains in the distance. They're resilient. What they will learn is that actions have consequences and that hurtful words can destroy relationships forever. But Mom, please, you can't just disappear like this. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick? How will we know? Now she was worried about my well-being. How convenient. Rebecca, in the last 5 years, I've had 3 episodes of high blood pressure that sent me to the hospital. Do you know how many times you visited me? None. You always had something more important to do, so don't come to me now with concerns about my health. That's not true, she weakly protested. It is true. The first time I was hospitalized, I called you from the emergency room. You told me you couldn't come because you had a hair appointment. The second time was David's birthday, and you were celebrating. The third time, you simply didn't answer the phone. The silence on the other end of the line confirmed that she remembered every single occasion perfectly. I thought it wasn't serious, she murmured. Of course, because my health was never a priority for you. But my checks were. It's not about the money, Rebecca screamed. It's about you. I miss you, Mom. Do you miss me, or do you miss having someone available 24/7 to solve your problems? I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. It immediately rang again, but this time I turned it off completely. I needed peace to enjoy my first night of freedom. That night, I went out to dinner alone at an elegant restaurant by the lake. I ordered the most expensive dish on the menu, salmon with caviar that cost $80, and I drank an entire bottle of French wine. It had been years since I had given myself that kind of luxury, always thinking that the money could be useful for Rebecca. The next day, Thursday, I turned on my phone and found 47 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from Rebecca and David. The messages evolved from pleas to threats. Please, Mom, answer, the first one said. We're so worried, the fifth one said. If you don't answer, we're going to call the police, the 10th one threatened. We already called the police. They said there's nothing they can do because you left a letter explaining your departure, the 15th one admitted. The bank called us. You canceled the joint account. How are we going to pay for emergencies, the 20th one said. It was beautiful to see how the concern for my well-being quickly turned into panic over the financial implications of my absence. I decided to answer just one message. I'm fine. I'm exactly where I need to be. Don't look for me. The response came in less than 5 minutes. "You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to ruin us. The mortgage lawyer called us. He says you can take our house." There it was. The truth. She wasn't worried that I might be suffering or in danger. She was worried because she had finally understood the financial implications of losing me. I replied, "Now you understand what it's worth to have me in your life. Too bad you realized it too late." That afternoon, I had my meeting with the Swiss financial advisor. He was an older, very professional man named Herr Meyer, who helped me understand all my options for permanent residency in Switzerland. "With your current savings and your American pension," he explained, "you can live comfortably here for the rest of your life. Switzerland has excellent medical care programs for retired foreigners, and the quality of life is exceptional." For the first time in years, I spoke openly about my finances without worrying about saving money for Rebecca's emergencies. It was liberating to calculate my expenses based solely on my own needs and desires. "You can also invest part of your savings in the Swiss economy," Herr Meyer continued. "The returns are stable and secure. In 5 years, you could double your assets if you invest wisely." Double my assets. How many times had I had that opportunity, but I had preferred to spend the money on my daughter's whims. "Is there anything else I should tell you?" the advisor added. "We have many clients in situations similar to yours. Older people who have come to Switzerland looking for a new start after complicated family relationships. You are not alone in this experience." That information comforted me deeply. I wasn't the only mother who had been manipulated and discarded by ungrateful children. There was a whole community of people who had chosen their own happiness over the toxic demands of their families. On Friday morning, I joined a hiking group for older people. There were 8 women and 4 men, all between 60 and 75 years old, all looking for adventure and new experiences. During the bus ride, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Ingrid, a 71-year-old German who had arrived in Switzerland 2 years earlier. "What brought you here?" she asked me as we admired the landscape from the window. "A daughter who told me that her greatest birthday wish was for me to die," I answered without filters. I no longer had the energy to sugarcoat the reality. Ingrid looked at me with wide eyes. "Seriously?" "Completely seriously. After financing her house, practically raising her children, and sacrificing my retirement for her needs, she told me that my presence in her life was an unbearable burden." "My goodness," Ingrid murmured. "And what did you do?" "What she asked. I disappeared from her life, and here I am." Ingrid smiled with admiration. "You are very brave. It took me 5 years to make the decision to walk away from my toxic family. My son and daughter-in-law treated me like an ATM with legs." For the rest of the day, Ingrid and I shared our stories. She had come to Switzerland after realizing that her adult children only contacted her when they needed money for their vacations, their new cars, or their whims. When she decided to set boundaries, they accused her of being a selfish mother and threatened not to let her see her grandchildren. "The first few months were difficult," Ingrid confessed as we walked through a medieval town. "Guilt ate me up. I thought maybe I was really selfish, that a good mother should always sacrifice for her children." "And what changed your perspective?" I asked. "I realized that my children never wondered if I was happy, if I had enough money for my own needs, or if my constant sacrifices were hurting me. They only cared about what I could give them. That's not love, Giulietta. That's exploitation." Her words resonated deeply in my heart. For decades, I had confused emotional manipulation with filial love, constant demands with genuine need. That night in my apartment, I decided to turn on my phone for the last time in several days. I had 62 missed calls and 47 text messages. Most of them were from Rebecca and David, but there were also some from unknown numbers. I read the text messages chronologically, observing the evolution of my daughter's panic. The first ones were still emotional pleas. "Mom, please come back. We need you. The kids are crying for you." But they gradually became more desperate and financial. The bank called us for a meeting on Friday. They say that as the co-signer, you have the right to reclaim the house. They can't take our house away for a misunderstanding. By the 5th day, the messages had become aggressive. This is ridiculous, Mom. You're ruining our lives over a tantrum. Act like an adult and come back. And finally, desperate, I called all the hospitals, the police, your friends. No one knows where you are. If something happens to you, it's going to be my fault. Please, just tell me you're okay. It was fascinating to observe how at no point did Rebecca genuinely apologize for wishing me dead. At no point did she acknowledge the cruelty of her words or express real remorse. It all revolved around the negative consequences my absence had for her. I decided to reply one last message. I am perfectly fine and happier than I have been in years. What you are experiencing now are the natural consequences of your actions. I hope this experience helps you understand the value of the people you love before it's too late with others in your life. The response came immediately. Please, Mom, we can fix this. I promise I'll never say horrible things again. Just come back. I wrote my final response. Empty promises don't mend broken hearts. Rebecca, the words you said to me revealed what you really think of me. You can't take that truth back with desperate promises. After sending that message, I blocked her number and all the numbers associated with David. I also blocked the unknown numbers that had been calling me. It was time to close that chapter for good. On Monday morning, I met again with Herr Meyer to sign the papers that would allow me to reside permanently in Switzerland. I also made arrangements to permanently transfer my American pension and begin the process of selling my apartment in my hometown. Are you sure you want to make this permanent? Herr Meyer asked me. It's a very big decision. I have never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied, signing each document with a firm hand. For the first time in decades, I am making decisions based on my own happiness, not on the demands of others. That afternoon, I received a call from Elvira, my dear neighbor and accomplice. Her voice sounded excited. Julieta, you have to hear this, she said. Rebecca came to my apartment yesterday, crying hysterically. She begged me to tell you to come back, that it had been a terrible misunderstanding. And what did you tell her? I asked. I told her the truth, that what she had said to you was unforgivable, and that if I were you, I would have disappeared forever too. You should have seen her face when she realized that even her neighbors knew how cruel she had been to you. Did she mention anything about the financial problems? I asked with curiosity. Oh yes, she told me that without your help they can't pay the mortgage, that the bank is pressuring them, that David can't find a stable job, and that the kids need things for school that they can't afford. Basically, she realized everything you did for them when she lost it. It was exactly what I had expected. She didn't miss me as a person. She missed my function as a financial provider and problem solver. Elvira, I told her, when someone asks about me, especially Rebecca, I want you to tell them that I'm dead to them, because in a sense it's true. The Julieta who constantly sacrificed herself for an ungrateful daughter really died on her birthday. I understand perfectly, Elvira replied. And you know what? I think it's the best death you could have chosen. 3 weeks after my arrival in Switzerland, my new life had taken shape in ways I never imagined. I had enrolled in German classes 3 times a week. I had started a watercolor painting course on Tuesdays and Thursdays and had joined a book club for expats that met on Sundays. For the first time in decades, my calendar was full of activities that I had chosen, activities that gave me pleasure and personal growth. But the most surprising thing was the money. Without Rebecca's constant financial demands, my savings not only remained stable, but they were growing. The investments I had made with Herr Meyer were already showing positive returns, and for the first time, I could calculate my financial future based solely on my own needs. On that Thursday morning, as I had breakfast at my favorite cafe by the lake, I received a call from an international number I didn't recognize. I hesitated to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mrs. Julieta Johnson? A female voice with an American accent asked. Yes, this is she. Who's calling? My name is Sarah Williams. I'm a social worker in the Family Services Department in your hometown. I'm calling because we've received a complaint about your well-being." My blood ran cold. A complaint? What kind? "Your daughter, Rebecca Johnson, filed a complaint alleging that you may be suffering from dementia or cognitive decline, and that you've made financial and life decisions that put you at risk. According to her, you disappeared suddenly and are living in precarious conditions abroad." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rebecca had gone to the extreme of involving social services, inventing a mental illness to invalidate my decisions and force my return. "Ms. Williams," I replied in a firm voice, "I do not suffer from dementia or cognitive decline. I am living in Switzerland by my own choice, in a comfortable apartment with excellent medical care and in perfect mental health. My daughter's allegations are completely false." "I understand your position, Mrs. Johnson, but we need to verify your well-being. Would it be possible to coordinate a medical and psychological evaluation through the American consulate in Switzerland?" "Of course," I replied without hesitation. "I am willing to undergo any evaluation that demonstrates I am in perfect mental health and that my decisions have been made with complete lucidity." After coordinating the details for the evaluation, I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of rage and disbelief. Rebecca had crossed a line of no return. Not only had she wished me dead, but now she was trying to destroy my mental credibility to regain control over my money and my life. I immediately called my lawyer, Ansel, back in my hometown. "Julieta," he greeted me with concern. "I'm glad to hear your voice. I've had a very interesting week with your daughter." "I bet you have. I just spoke with social services. Rebecca is accusing me of having dementia." "That's not all," Ansel sighed. "She also hired another lawyer to try to challenge all the legal changes you made before you left. She's alleging that you weren't in your right mind when you signed them." "Can she do that?" "She can try, but she doesn't have solid legal grounds. I have recordings of all our conversations where you clearly demonstrate total lucidity. Furthermore, the fact that you meticulously planned your departure and are living independently in Switzerland contradicts any allegations of cognitive decline. What else is she doing?" "She has tried to access your bank accounts, alleging concern for your well-being. She also wanted to stop the process of reclaiming the house, but since everything is legally backed, and she herself signed the documents where she acknowledges that David lost his job again, she has no valid arguments." It was incredible how far Rebecca was willing to go to get back the financial benefits she had lost. "Ansel, I want you to prepare a defamation lawsuit against my daughter. Her false allegations about my mental state could affect my reputation and my legal rights." "It would be my pleasure," Ansel replied with satisfaction. "After seeing how she has treated you, I think it's time for her to face the legal consequences of her actions." 2 days later, I showed up at the American consulate in Zurich for the medical and psychological evaluations. The American doctor who examined me was an older, experienced man who immediately understood the situation. "Mrs. Johnson," he told me after an exhaustive 3-hour evaluation, "not only are you in perfect mental health, but the decisions you have made demonstrate admirable lucidity and courage. Your daughter is clearly trying to manipulate the legal system to recover financial benefits. That will be officially documented." "Absolutely. I'll send a detailed report to social services explaining that her allegations are unfounded and that you are living an independent and healthy life in Switzerland." That same afternoon, I received a call from the social worker. "Mrs. Johnson, we have received the medical report from the consulate. It is clear that your daughter's allegations are baseless. We are going to close the case and notify Rebecca that her complaints were unfounded." "Thank you," I replied. "Will this be in some kind of record?" "Yes, it will be documented that she filed a false complaint about a family member's well-being, which could have legal implications if it is repeated." Perfect. Rebecca had not only failed in her attempt to invalidate my decisions, but now she had an official record of filing false complaints. That night, I decided to do something I had been putting off. Write an open letter detailing my entire experience, not for Rebecca, but for other mothers who might be living in similar situations of manipulation and emotional abuse from adult children. I wrote for 4 hours, documenting every sacrifice I had made, every manipulation I had suffered, and every step I had taken to reclaim my dignity and my life. It was a 20-page letter that I titled, "When a Mother's Love Becomes Self-Destruction, My Story of Liberation at 72. I decided to send the letter to an online blog I had discovered that specialized in stories of older women who had found the courage to radically change their lives. A week later, I received an enthusiastic response from the editor. "Julieta," she wrote, "your story is powerful and inspiring. We have received hundreds of comments from women who completely identify with your experience. Would you be willing to participate in a video interview for our YouTube channel?" I accepted immediately. It was time to use my experience to help other women who were trapped in toxic family dynamics. The interview was published 2 weeks later and quickly went viral. Thousands of women shared similar stories of adult children who emotionally manipulated them and financially exploited them. The comments were a catalog of pain and recognition. "My 40-year-old son lives in my house, doesn't pay rent, and yells at me when I ask him to look for a job," one woman wrote. "My daughter only calls me when she needs money for her vacations, but she never has time to visit me when I'm sick," another shared. "I thought I was the only mother who felt used by her own children," a third confessed. But the most impactful thing came a week after the interview was published. I received an email from an address I immediately recognized. It was David, my former son-in-law. "Julieta," he wrote, "I saw your interview on YouTube. I need you to know that I completely agree with you. What Rebecca said to you was unforgivable, and the way she has treated you for years is unacceptable. I myself have been a witness to how she manipulates and uses you, but I never had the courage to confront her because we were so dependent on your financial help." He continued, "I want you to know that the kids miss you a lot, and they don't understand why you don't come to see them anymore. Rebecca has told them that you're sick and can't visit, but I believe they deserve to know the truth when they are older." The email ended, "I know it's probably too late for apologies, but I wanted you to know that at least one person in this family acknowledges how badly we treated you and how much you sacrificed for us. I hope you are happy in your new life." I read the email 3 times before deciding how to respond. Finally, I wrote, "David, I appreciate your honesty, but apologies after the fact don't change the damage done. I hope this experience helps you to be a better husband and father, and that you teach your children to value the people who love them before it's too late." It was the first time someone in my family had publicly acknowledged the abuse I had suffered. It didn't change my decision to stay away, but it did give me a sense of validation that I had been needing for years. My new life in Switzerland was flourishing in ways I never imagined. I had real friends who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give. I had hobbies and passions that I had rediscovered. I had peace of mind and financial stability. And most importantly, I had dignity. 6 months after my arrival in Switzerland, my life had taken a shape I had never dreamed possible. It was a perfect spring morning when I received a call that would change everything once again. It was Elvira, my dear neighbor and accomplice. "Julieta," she said with an excited voice, "you have to hear this. Rebecca lost the house." My heart stopped for a moment. Despite everything, a part of me still worried about my grandchildren's well-being. "What exactly happened?" I asked. "The bank foreclosed on the mortgage last week. David couldn't find a stable job. They fell behind on the payments, and since you are the co-signer and are exercising your legal rights, the bank proceeded with the foreclosure. Rebecca came to me yesterday, crying hysterically." "And the kids?" "They're fine. They moved to a small apartment on the other side of town. David finally got a job in a factory, earning a lot less than before, but at least it's something stable. Rebecca had to go back to work too." It was strange, the mix of feelings I experienced. I didn't feel joy for their suffering, but a deep satisfaction of justice. For the first time in their lives, Rebecca and David were experiencing the real consequences of their decisions without having someone to rescue them. "Is there anything else?" Elvira continued. "Rebecca asked me if I knew how to contact you. She said she wants to genuinely apologize, that she finally understands everything she lost when she lost you." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that some wounds are too deep to heal, and that some words can never be taken back. I also told her that you are flourishing in your new life, and that it's probably best for both of you that she doesn't try to contact you." Elvira was right. Over these 6 months, I had built an inner peace that I didn't want to risk for empty promises from a daughter who had repeatedly shown that she only valued me when she needed me. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from my lawyer, Ansel. "Julieta, I have some interesting news," he said. "Rebecca's house has finally been sold by the bank, and since you were the co-signer, you have the right to recover your initial investment of $150,000 plus the accumulated interest." "How much is that in total?" $185,000. The bank has already approved the transfer. The money will be in your Swiss account next week." It was incredible. Not only had I recovered my original investment, but I had gained an additional $5,000, money that would have been lost forever if I had continued to be the ever-sacrificing mother. "There's also something else," Ansel continued. "Your apartment in your hometown has finally sold. After commissions and expenses, the net amount is $95,000. In total, I was receiving almost $300,000 in assets that I had given up for lost. With my existing savings and the investments I had made in Switzerland, my total net worth now exceeded $500,000. At 72 years old, I was richer than I had ever been in my life. That night, I celebrated at my favorite restaurant by the lake. I ordered French champagne and toasted the brave woman who had the courage to start over when everything seemed lost. As I dined, I thought about the entire journey. I had started this journey as a broken and humiliated mother, devastated by the cruel words of an ungrateful daughter. But now I was an independent woman, financially stable, surrounded by genuine friends, and living the life I had always dreamed of. The next day, I decided to do something I had been considering for weeks, write a full book about my experience, not just my story, but a practical guide for older women who were trapped in toxic family relationships. I contacted a Swiss publisher that specialized in self-help and personal growth books. The editor, a woman named Brigitte, was immediately interested. "Julieta," she told me during our meeting, "your story touches on a topic that affects millions of women but is rarely talked about openly. Emotional abuse by adult children is an epidemic problem that needs to be exposed." I spent the next 3 months writing, "When Love Hurts, Freeing Yourself from Family Emotional Abuse After 70. The book documented not only my personal experience, but also practical strategies for recognizing manipulation, setting healthy boundaries, and finding the courage to prioritize one's own well-being. The book was published 8 months later and became a bestseller in several European countries. The letters I received from readers were incredible. Women from all over the world wrote to me, telling me how my story had given them the courage to make radical changes in their own lives. "I read your book and finally understood that I am not a bad mother for refusing to continue to finance my 35-year-old son's irresponsibility," wrote Maria from Spain. "Your story helped me understand that true love does not require self-destruction," Carmen from Mexico wrote to me. "After reading your book, I sold my big house and moved to a small apartment I can afford without depending on my children's help. For the first time in years, I sleep in peace," Rosa from Argentina shared. But the letter that moved me the most came 1 year after the book's publication. It was from a young mother named Andrea. "Mrs. Johnson," she wrote, "I'm 30 years old and have a 65-year-old mother who has sacrificed her whole life for me and my siblings. After reading your book, I realized that we are treating her exactly like Rebecca treated you. Your story opened my eyes and made me understand that I was repeating a toxic pattern that could destroy my relationship with my mother forever. Yesterday, I called my mom and apologized for all the years of taking her for granted. I also told her that I want to help her fulfill her own dreams instead of expecting her to always be available for mine. Thank you for helping me understand this before it was too late. That letter made me cry with joy. My pain had served to prevent other families from going through the same destruction. 2 years after my arrival in Switzerland, I received a physical letter in my mailbox. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. When I opened it, my heart stopped. It was from my grandchildren, now 12 years old. "Dear Grandma Giulietta," they wrote in childlike handwriting, "Dad told us the truth about why you left. He told us that Mom said some very ugly things to you, and that's why you decided to start a new life away from us. We want you to know that we miss you a lot, and that we understand why you left. We also want you to know that we are proud of you for being so brave. When we are older, we would like to visit you in Switzerland if you want us to. We love you, Grandma." The letter was signed by both twins. It included drawings they had made of me living happily in the Swiss mountains. I cried for an hour after reading that letter. Not out of sadness, but from the understanding that my decision to preserve my dignity had been the right one, even if it meant moving away from people I loved. I decided to write them back. "My dearest grandchildren," I wrote, "your words are the most beautiful gift I have received in years. I love you deeply and always will, no matter the distance. When you are older and can make your own decisions, the doors to my heart and my home will always be open for you. Until then, I want you to know that your grandma is living a full and happy life, surrounded by beauty and peace. Keep this love you feel for me, but also learn from this experience. Words have the power to build or destroy, and relationships are based on mutual respect, not on unilateral sacrifice. I love you with all my heart." Today, 3 years after that terrible birthday that changed my life forever, I am sitting on my balcony in Zurich, looking at the mountains as I write the last lines of my story. I am 75 years old, with assets of more than $600,000, a bestseller book, dear friends from all over the world, and an inner peace I never thought I would experience again. Rebecca asked me as a birthday gift to disappear from her life. I granted her that wish in the most spectacular way possible. What she never calculated was that by losing me, she not only lost a mother who loved her unconditionally, but she also lost the person who had kept her financial world stable for decades. My disappearance was my gift to her. My new life was my gift to me. And it was worth every tear, every sacrifice, and every moment of pain that brought me here. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to have the courage to lose yourself completely in order to be reborn as the person you were always meant to be. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.